Welcome to Spoiled Vision Movie Recaps. Today, we'll explore a 2020 fantasy and sci-fi film, The Midnight Sky. Be warned, spoilers await. Augustine, an elderly man afflicted by a terminal illness, remains alone at an Earth observatory. His duty is to monitor astronauts' journeys in search of a new habitable planet while everyone else evacuates the island. He lives in solitude, performing everyday tasks like sleeping, dining, and drinking, all by himself. To sustain himself, he administers self-blood transfusions and takes medications throughout the day. In the past, Augustine used to deliver lectures to large crowds, discussing potential life-supporting planets, like K23. Following one such lecture, a woman approaches him at an after-party, initiating a flirtatious conversation. They share a few drinks, during which she questions the accuracy of his recently published book on K23. Augustine then awakens in the present and starts inspecting the active missions via the observatory's computer. Most missions are inactive, but one captures his attention. Aether, the final remaining mission. Augustine examines photos of the Aether crew and recognizes a woman in one of the pictures. Determined to make contact, he searches for a way to reach them. Sully, the woman in the photograph, plays a crucial role as the communication specialist in Aether's 5-person crew. Sully experiences a distressing nightmare about being stranded on K23 while pregnant. She shares a close relationship with the crew, especially Captain Aid, the father of her child. While in her operating room, Sully detects a mysterious signal, prompting her to alert the rest of the crew. Back on Earth, Augustine continues his daily routine until a fire alarm goes off in the observatory. He investigates and extinguishes the fire, only to collapse from exhaustion. In his weakened state, he discovers a little girl hiding under the sink, abandoned and alone. Dismayed by the girl's situation, Augustine desperately attempts to contact someone via radio to report her presence, but his efforts prove futile. Augustine locates the storage unit where the girl has been sleeping and tries to explain that he cannot care for her, but she remains unresponsive. Augustine prepares dinner for the girl, and she expresses herself through a drawing of a flower, an iris, hinting that it's her name. Augustine resumes his attempts to reach Aether, all the while keeping the girl, Iris, in a separate room. During the night, Iris returns to Augustine's room and creates a small nest in the corner, sleeping on the floor. Meanwhile, Aether encounters communication issues of their own, unable to make contact with other ships or anyone on Earth. Returning from their K23 expedition with the revelation that the planet can indeed support human life, Iris observes Augustine performing his blood transfusions. She reclines in a nearby chair, gazing up through the observatory's roof at the stars above. Decades earlier, a young Augustine toils in his study, and the same woman from the party chastises him for not answering her calls. She expresses dissatisfaction with his excuse of being engrossed in work, and falsely claims she isn't pregnant after all. Accusing him of being consumed by his work and neglecting those who care about him, she scolds him. In the present, Augustine ventures outside to inspect the antenna responsible for communication, only to find dozens of fallen, dying birds in the snow. He realizes that the contaminated air has reached the observatory sooner than expected. Understanding that the observatory's antenna is insufficient to contact Aether, he remembers that the Lake Hazen antenna, once a weather station, has the necessary strength. He informs Iris that they must journey to Lake Hazen, not only to escape the advancing contaminated air, but also to have a chance of contacting Aether before it's too late. Both Augustine and Iris don multiple layers of heavy clothing. He equips Iris with goggles and a breathing apparatus, stressing the importance of never removing it. They gathered essential supplies from the observatory and load them onto a jet ski. Departing from the observatory, they head into the snowy tundra toward Lake Hazen. On Aether, the crew passes the time by engaging in holographic interactions with their loved ones, playing 3-dimensional video games, and participating in card games. An alarm interrupts their tranquility, indicating that their ship has drifted off course. They use the signal from K23 to determine their exact location and a route back to Earth, which will take them through uncharted territory. Augustine and Iris spend the night in a tent amidst the snow. The following day, during their journey, they come across the wreckage of a downed plane. Upon discovering a deceased boy outside the aircraft, Augustine instructs Iris to stay put while he investigates further. Inside the wreckage he finds mainly debris, but as he prepares to leave, a severely wounded man seizes his foot. The man pleads for Augustine to save him. Iris, curious, peeks at the body, but startles and rejoins Augustine in the plane. Augustine ultimately fulfills the man's request by shooting him, ending his suffering. This grim event triggers a flashback of the woman from the party leading him, taking their daughter, whom he had never met. On Aether, Maya conducts an ultrasound on Sully's pregnant belly, revealing that she will be having a girl. The crew enthusiastically begins brainstorming names. While traveling on the jet ski, Iris spots a distant bunker, and they decide to investigate. Augustine examines the bunker and deems it suitable for an overnight stay. He arranges their equipment and leaves the jet ski outside. Watching Iris draw a woman, Augustine mentions that he recognizes her, reminiscing about the wonderful things he remembers. Iris breaks her silence, asking if he loved her. That night, the bunker starts to flood as it sinks into the melting ice. Augustine evacuates Iris and instructs her to run while he retrieves their belongings. He narrowly escapes the sinking bunker and tries to use the jet ski, which submerges under the ice. He attempts to swim after it but almost runs out of air. Climbing back onto the ice, he reunites with Iris. They must now continue their journey to Lake Hazen on foot with no supplies. Later, Augustine shares the last of their food with Iris, reassuring her that Lake Hazen will offer plenty to eat. They trek through a blinding snowstorm, barely able to see ahead. In the midst of it, wolves encircle them, and Augustine fires his shotgun. Amid the chaos, he loses track of Iris, calling for her with no response. After a fruitless search, he despairs and lies down in the snow. A vision of the woman from the party appears before him, and he eventually realizes it's Iris. He embraces her, relieved to have found her. The next day, they reach Lake Hazen and promptly attempt to contact Aether. Sully manages to pick up Augustine's signal and responds. Augustine tries to explain the Earth's situation, but their signal becomes scrambled, leaving Sully unable to comprehend him. The signal is lost and an alarm blares. Aether is navigating the uncharted route and gets bombarded by asteroids, inflicting significant damage on the ship and destroying their communication equipment. The crew assesses the ship's damage and decides to rebuild part of their communication systems. Maya, Sully, and Abe prepare to go outside the ship to make the repairs, with this being Maya's first spacewalk. Maya feels extremely nervous and experiences nausea several times before venturing outside. Once outside the ship, the repairs progress smoothly, and they begin the return journey to the vessel. As the crew tries to return to the ship amid the asteroid onslaught, they ensure everyone's safety. Maya, while making her way back inside, observes blood droplets floating into her helmet from her suit. In a rush, Abe and Sully guide her back to the ship, and Mitchell rushes to their aid with the medical kit. Upon removing Maya's helmet, a substantial amount of blood escapes her suit into the ship. Panic sets in as Maya insists there's too much blood. Despite their best efforts, the crew fails to close the wound caused by debris during the asteroid hit, and Maya tragically succumbs to her injuries. The crew mourns her loss but is soon distracted by their first view of Earth, which appears lifeless and shrouded in radiation. Aether reestablishes contact with Augustine, who informs them they can't land on Earth. He reveals he's the sole survivor, and there are no other active missions. The crew is devastated by the realization they won't return home, and their only option is to return to K-23. Tom, determined to find out what happened to his family, seeks permission from Aid to take a reentry pod back to Earth. Aid grants his request. As Tom prepares for his journey, Mitchell shares the story of his deceased daughter, who would have been Maya's age. He asks to accompany Tom to return Maya's body, and Tom agrees. They bid farewell to Sully and Aid, departing in the reentry pod for Earth. Sully contacts Augustine to update him on the crew's situation and their plan to return to K-23. She expresses her admiration for his work and laments not being able to meet him. Augustine inquires about her name, and she reveals it's Iris. As Sully describes K-23, Augustine decides not to reveal his identity as her long-lost father. The little girl Iris that Augustine was seeing turns out to be a hallucination. Aether enters a communication blackout zone, and the signal is lost. Abe and Sully, the last remaining crew members, make their way back to K-23 with hopes of potentially rebuilding civilization. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification for more movie recaps.